Hello, and welcome to another weekly wisdom call. My name is Alexander Hamilton Dunlop. We're going to be talking about the Book of Life that was hidden in plain sight as a deck of 52 cards. Got a beautiful view out the window on this beautiful day as we get situated. Hi, David. Welcome to another weekly wisdom call. All right, as you guys know, this is an ancient book of wisdom that was hidden in plain sight. 52 cards, 52 weeks, 4 suits, 4 seasons. You have 13 cards in each suit from ace to the king. Add up the face values of these 13 cards, 1 through 13. 1 plus 2 plus 3. Add up the values of all the 52 cards, you'll get 364. And then this character, the Joker, that's the 53rd symbol in the deck. He's the 5th element in this 4-part system, and his numeric value is represented as a proportion of 5/4, or his interplay with this 4-part system. So you reduce that fraction of 5/4 to 1 1/4, and you add him back to the deck, you get 365 1/4. It's the exact calculation of our solar year. And this is as old as anything we know. We don't know exactly how old this is. In my book that I published, that was an Amazon bestseller when it first came out, I talk about the history of these cards, and I trace it back all the way back to Sumerian myth in Mesopotamia. So you can read all about that and learn the history and the background. What I'm talking to you about in these weekly wisdom calls is I'm talking to you about the energy of the week. 52 cards, 52 weeks. Each card symbolizes a week, as in the Kabbalistic way of looking at things, that each week is an energy that is a window of opportunity for us. And this week, the energy in play is symbolized by the 8 of clubs. A little bit sweaty over here. Yeah. Whew, I need my handkerchief so I can mop my brow. This is the card of the week, the 8 of clubs. So this is the symbolic representation of the energy that's present in the quantum field all around us. This is the symbol that represents the energy vibrations that are present. And knowing what is present gives us an opportunity to be in harmony with what is, consciously. I mean, of course, it can happen accidentally, or certainly it can happen intuitively and psychically. What's been really helpful for me is to have this actual tool so that my mind can have a mental kind of a hook to hang its understanding on that gives my mind comfort and peace, and then allows my whole being to relax into what is. So I hope that that is true for you, that this tool helps you to relax into what is. Now I want to show you something interesting today. This is the size of an ordinary card. I've had the numbers taken off, but this is the size of a regular poker playing card. I had another card made which is restored to the sacred dimensions that this knowledge would have been originally, following the golden mean and the golden proportion. Look at the difference in the spacing and the sizing between an 8 of clubs from a regular deck and an 8 of clubs when restored to the golden proportion, golden mean. It's much more spacious, right? There's much more opening. It is interesting that we have compressed this knowledge into a smaller, tighter place, which is of course what we have done, and we've hidden it in this compressed little deck. But it's much more spacious, much more expansive, and this actually gives us a really important clue about how to play the 8 of clubs well whenever we encounter the 8 of clubs energy. The danger whenever we're in the field of the 8 of clubs is being too compressed and too constricted, too tightly woven inside of our own mental machinations. And if that happens, then we become locked inside of a closed loop unable to or unwilling to open up to someone else's mindset, someone else's perspective. So in the quantum weather report for this week, I encourage you to be on the lookout for closed-minded mental loops where you're woven too tightly inside of your own rationalizations, or where other people who you encounter are similarly woven too tightly inside of their own assumptions and their own rationalizations. It's a closed loop. It's an 8. In the symbolism, the 8 is actually in the empty space. Right, that's the 8. When we are not playing it well, though, we compress and constrict that inside of our own closed loop of logic. And we play this game of crazy 8s, looping back and forth inside of our own mind like a mouse chasing the cheese, trying to find our way out of the maze. But we don't, because we just keep scurrying back and forth in this little loop. And we think we make progress because we get to another opening, but then we just loop back on ourselves. What's important whenever this 8 of clubs energy is present is that we expand the loops wider. And that means welcoming in new information, welcoming in new data points, welcoming in an alternative perspective, listening to somebody else's viewpoint. That's how we make this 8 more expansive and more inclusive. If we're not, then we're going to be suffocating and constricting and compressing and getting lost in our own analysis. Conversely, it is a great week to do analytical work. If you really want to pore over spreadsheets and do intensive mental analysis, this is a good week for that. This intensive mental analysis, to weave all the data together into a coherent story. That's the gift of this energy. You can take various data points and weave it all together into a coherent narrative. So that's great. But for our personal lives and our personal interactions, what we tend to do is weave our own narrative to the exclusion of someone else's narrative, because we think we have all the data. We think we have all the answers. This is the profound ego trip that we get stuck in. With our own mental projections, assumptions, we then weave a whole narrative and a whole story based on our own mental presumptions and attachments. And we think we've woven a whole story that is inclusive and comprehensive, this systematic theology, this grand meta-narrative that explains it all and puts it all together. But in fact, we've just woven a narrative based on our own presumptions and our own assumptions. So again, what's essential this week is to welcome opposing viewpoints, welcome more data, and expand the loops of your thinking. You're strong enough to do that. And that's the crux of it, is realizing that we are mentally strong enough to reassess, to recalibrate, to welcome in new information and then weave a different, bigger narrative. In other words, we're strong enough to let go of our assumptions. We're strong enough to let go of our attachments and welcome in a more comprehensive narrative that actually feels better, that actually makes more space to breathe, more space to be. And again, look at the symbolism and the difference of the sacred sizing versus the conventional deck. And look how much more space there is in there, how much more white space. That's the empty space. And in all mindfulness training, Buddhist philosophy, it's all about making more space to witness our thoughts. Each one of these clubs represents a thought. And making more space between our thoughts so that our thoughts don't bump into each other and we get lost in a string of thoughts. And yes, David, this is a good thing to do any week. And it brings up a really good point, which is that each of these 52 archetypes is an archetypal pattern that recurs endlessly in our lives. That's what an archetype is. It's an endlessly recurring pattern. It's a type that we encounter always. And so whenever someone is giving a mindfulness training or exercise, they're tapping into this energy field and talking about this energy field of being more mindful of your thoughts, creating more space between your thoughts, allowing your thoughts to gently and subtly expand, so you're not quite so attached to each thought, but you create more space around the thoughts. And so anytime anyone is teaching that, whenever that is, they're talking about this energy field that's symbolized by the Eight of Clubs that we all always experience. And this week it comes to a head. This week is like the crest or the peak. And so, very important this week to be mindful, to have space in our thoughts, to allow there to be more space between thoughts. Take a breath, allowing the thoughts to come and go, allowing there to be a wider, more spacious harmony in our thinking, which diffuses and dissolves argument, right? We're not forcefully holding on to our opinion and our idea. We're willing to detach from our opinion, our idea, our assumption, and allow there to be a little more space, right? And in that space, someone else, our loved ones, friends, family, in that open space, someone else has an opportunity to share their idea, their opinion, their viewpoint. And in that space, we create a much larger harmony, a more interesting narrative, a more compelling story, a more enriching experience, because we've created more space inside of our own mindset, more space for life to arise in the empty space. So I encourage you to look for and cultivate empty space this week. Do your analysis, sure. Tell your story, sure. Weave your experience, absolutely. And see how you can make more space. More space for contrary opinions, more space for new information, more space for your loved ones to share their thoughts with you. And see how that creates an even more exciting and dynamic experience that you can then weave into an even larger harmony inside of your own thinking about life. See how that works. And enjoy the game of your life. Enjoy weaving this story, this narrative together for your whole life. Have fun, everyone. And may you live your life like it's your favorite game to play.